theory that Tupac may possibly be alive. What you think?
Why you think nobody been arrested if they said they didn't want Tupac? Because Tupac not he was, they'd be arresting those dudes for.
For almost 30 years, people believed Tupac Shakur was gone, shot and killed on that night in Las Vegas in 1996. But now, the story is shaking again. Snoop Dogg, Tupac's close friend and partner in music, has dropped words that make people think the impossible. Tupac might still be alive. And he isn't the only one. Suge Knight, the man who was sitting right next to Tupac when the bullets hit, has said many times that Pac never died. Neither Snoop nor Suge is speaking in riddles. They are suggesting something bigger.
What's happening nowadays, he's seen.
In talks and interviews, Snoop hints that Pac is still here. Other rappers have also said things that keep the mystery alive. Could Tupac's death have been staged? Did he escape, leaving behind a world that was not ready for what he had to say? And why are the men who knew him best, the ones who stood with him, smoked with him, and rapped with him, suddenly suggesting that his story didn't really end in 1996? If Snoop Dogg is saying Tupac is alive, then what does he know that the rest of us don't? Tupac Amaru Shakur was more than just a rapper. He was a voice for the streets, a poet for the unheard, and a revolutionary spirit wrapped in music. Unfortunately, he lived in a world filled with jealousy, betrayal, and danger. He had feuds with rival rappers, tension with the law, and powerful figures who wanted to silence him. His fame came with constant threats, and his life was a storm of drama, violence, and survival. He was shot multiple times before the final attack in Las Vegas, and yet he always seemed to bounce back as if nothing could break him. The official story is well known. On the night of September 7th, 1996, Tupac Shakur was in Las Vegas with Death Row Records boss Marion Suge Knight. They attended a Mike Tyson fight at the MGM Grand. After the match, Tupac got into a scuffle with Orlando Anderson, a known gang affiliate. Hours later, while riding in a BMW with Suge Knight, Tupac was shot multiple times in a drive-by. The official report is that he died 6 days later, on September 13th, 1996, at the age of 25. That is the story on paper. But here's where the cracks begin to show. According to Suge, it was unbelievable that Pac was dead when he was recovering well, and he'd even talked and laughed with Pac the day it was reported he passed away.
When I left that hospital, me and Pac was laughing and joking. So I don't see how somebody can turn from doing well to doing bad.
So you seriously think that he might still be alive?
I would say this, Pac, you never know.
Also, why was Tupac cremated less than 24 hours after his death with no public autopsy photos? Why were the medical reports inconsistent, first stating he was shot 5 times, then 6? Why do some people who are close to him insist that Tupac had long been planning his disappearance? Months before his death, Tupac released an album under the alias Machiavelli, a direct reference to Niccolo Machiavelli, the Italian philosopher who wrote about the strategy of faking one's death to deceive enemies. In the album artwork and lyrics, Tupac left what many fans believe were coded messages, lines that seem to predict his own demise, yet hint at his return. Could this have been just clever artistry? Or was Tupac leaving behind a blueprint of his own escape? It is indeed worthy of consideration how important this piece of evidence is. But what is even a stronger reason to question if Tupac is indeed dead is what his closest ally, Suge Knight, has revealed. No one was closer to Tupac on that night than Suge Knight. He was in the car when the bullets rained down. He was the man who carried Death Row Records and had the power, money, and connections to hide someone if that was the plan. Over the years, Suge has given interviews that only add fuel to the fire. In 2014, he told reporters bluntly, Tupac's not dead. He's somewhere smoking a Cuban cigar.
Why you think nobody been arrested if they said they didn't want to kill Tupac? Because Tupac not dead. Tupac not dead. If he was dead, they'd be arresting those dudes for murder. You know he's somewhere smoking a Cuban cigar.
At first, it sounded like a throwaway line, but Suge never retracted it. In fact, he doubled down years later when approached at an event and asked about rumors that P. Diddy or others had orchestrated Tupac's death. He laughed it off. He said if that were the case, the government would have arrested them by now. He pointed out that even the man arrested in 2023 for Tupac's murder, Keffe D, couldn't be taken at face value because Keffe himself accused P. Diddy, yet Diddy was never charged.
Especially Hollywood rappers. We get our paperwork. Yeah. See what all we ever been arrested for. I guarantee it's never been nothing for me but straight real and violence.
So Suge Knight left it hanging in the air. If Diddy wasn't arrested, and if the official case doesn't add up, maybe the truth is something else entirely. Maybe Tupac is alive. Maybe he really is somewhere, smoking Cubans. But was Suge hinting at Cuba by accident, or was he saying out loud what many had whispered for decades? It is very curious why he should have used the word when there were already rumors about Tupac being sighted in Cuba. The idea that Tupac may have escaped to Cuba has always carried a certain logic, and much of it comes down to his family ties. One of the most important connections is his aunt Assata Shakur. She was a well-known activist accused of killing a New Jersey state trooper in the 1970s and later fled the United States after escaping prison. She was granted asylum in Cuba, where she has lived for decades. Tupac was very close to her, and the bond between them was deep, not just as family, but also through their shared history of fighting against injustice. With her being in Cuba, it becomes clear why many believe that if Tupac needed a place to disappear, Cuba was the most logical choice. Outside of the United States, Cuba is the only country where Tupac had real family ties. That fact alone gives weight to the rumors. If he had to flee the dangers around him, the government watching him, the gangs targeting him, and the constant threats to his life, it makes sense he would go somewhere safe, somewhere he would not be a stranger. In Cuba, he could find protection, guidance, and family support.
It also fits the idea of Tupac wanting peace. After years of living in chaos, surrounded by enemies and violence, Cuba could give him a normal life. Away from fame, away from danger, he could blend in, live quietly with his aunt, and still be close to family. If you think about it, where else could he have gone? Then there's the strangest report of them all. During a segment inside the TMZ newsroom, the crew discussed Tupac theories. At first, it was just the usual banter, rumors of sightings, the endless debate about whether the man was alive or gone. But then, the director dropped something unusual. He claimed that years earlier, he and a few staff members saw someone in a park in New Orleans who looked exactly like Tupac. Same face, same body type, same walk.
We saw that guy in New Orleans or wherever it was.
Yeah, it looked just like him.
It sure looked like Tupac to me.
They were stunned. For a moment, no one spoke. Could it have been just a look-alike, or had they really stumbled upon Tupac Shakur alive and living in plain sight in America itself?
Yo, look, Zulu, when the man, that's part in with the outlaw, and Rez from Howard back trying to be friendly and get autographs.
It's one thing to believe Tupac might have escaped to Cuba. It's another thing to think he could be walking around US streets, hiding in the open. But this video looked very real. And remember, this was long before we had AI that could generate deep fakes. And then we have Snoop Dogg, a man who knew Tupac personally, who shared stages with him, who mourned him in public. Yet even Snoop has made comments that make people pause. In interviews, Snoop has suggested that Pac was always ahead of his time, always plotting something bigger than music. He hinted that Pac knew too much about the industry, the government, and the streets, that maybe his exit was his greatest performance of all.
Told a story of what it's going to be as opposed to what it is. And now it's prophesized, you're starting to see it and you're starting to hear it.
Other rappers too have poured gasoline on the flames. From the Outlaws to modern artists who claim to have spoken with Pac privately, the whispers never stop. They don't just talk about his death, they talk about his life after death. In one instance, the rap producer Stretch thought the cameras were off and admitted that Tupac was alive, and he had seen him recently.
So if you ain't ready for it, get on the sidewalk.
One last question. Tupac stay alive?
Nobody knows.
Y'all good? Yeah, we go. Thanks a lot, man.
That's the muscle on me is Stretch.
But here's the real question. Are these rappers protecting a truth they all know? Or are they keeping alive the greatest myth in hip-hop? Because the myth itself is too powerful to die. Of course, no Tupac conspiracy is complete without pointing to the government. Tupac wasn't just a rapper, he was the son of revolutionaries. His lyrics targeted police brutality, systemic racism, and government oppression. He wasn't just entertainment, he was political. If there was anyone who had a motive to silence him, it wasn't just gangs or rivals, it was the state. Some believe the FBI and CIA had files on Tupac that ran hundreds of pages deep, that they feared his influence could spark another Black Panther-style movement in the 1990s. That his death or disappearance was engineered to protect the system.
And if that's true, then maybe Suge was right.
If Diddy or others were guilty, the government would have charged them. But since they haven't, maybe the truth is something far darker, or stranger. When Las Vegas police arrested Dwayne "Keefy D" Davis in 2023, it seemed like the case was finally closing. After nearly 30 years, someone was finally behind bars. But almost immediately, doubts spread. Keefy D himself had told conflicting stories over the years. He implicated others, including P. Diddy. He boasted, then backtracked. He seemed more like a man trying to control the narrative than confessing to a crime. And guess what? The government has not even tried him after many years of his arrest. Instead, they keep postponing the trial. And if prosecutors really believed his version, why was Diddy never charged? Why do key questions about the case still remain unanswered? Once again, the door stayed open for conspiracy. If the official suspect can't be trusted, then maybe the official story can't be trusted either. So where does that leave us?